these goddesses became very real beings to me. They weren't just information or pages in a book. They came to life in a very real way, and I would have these amazing experiences where I would sort of suddenly go into an altered state and see them all in a circle, and one of them might move and go to a completely different place in the wheel. And I thought, for example, that the goddess belonged in Aries and she might move over into the Virgo section, and I'd be puzzled, and then doing more research, I'd realize how that wisdom had been conveyed to me. So it was such a process of understanding how guidance works and how synchronicity works, and being open to being worked on. There's one for every single day, and they're divided into the zodiac signs, and as I called them, the goddess signs. And even though the book is arranged by the traditional calendar, beginning with spring, the maiden goddesses, the fertility goddesses, are in spring, the mother goddesses are in summer, the harvest goddesses come in fall, and the crones are in winter. So they also follow that round wheel of the year, which I found a source once, and I've never found it since, that the zodiac has been called the girdle of the goddess. One of the things on my to-do list, or hope to do, is to prepare some sort of a questionnaire like people take to find out what their particular archetype is, or their particular type of personality thrust. I think they're related very much to our zodiac sign, and by that I mean that someone who's an Aries with a lot of Aries fiery energy might carry the warrior archetype, where someone who's born in the sign of Cancer would have more nurturing energy and carry some of the mother archetype. Someone born in Sagittarius would be the discoverer archetype, and the sage. So I think there is a profound relationship between, that's one of the ways that we can learn. I believe we each have a predominant archetype, and then a couple of others probably that are subsidiaries in a sense, or secondary types of archetypes. And that's how we engage the world and how we interact with others. And the more we know about that, I believe the better we can understand ourselves and others and have a chance to get along better. That's the ideal. Well, when I started, as I said, I started probably in a very naive way, looking first and thinking about first goddesses that were more familiar. The Greek ones and the Roman ones, I suppose, are more familiar to most people in terms of just the ones who've survived in some ways in our mythology and movies like Clash of the Titans. And of course, I was also aware of Egyptian goddesses, since I'd been going to Egypt for a while, and the Mexican Mayan goddesses were interesting to me. And then I started getting books and doing research and finding out that there were literally thousands of goddesses, gods too for that matter, from around the world, from every tradition that I could find. And so it was being open, and I was guided by the frame of the zodiac and what I knew or thought were the primary qualities of each zodiac sign, their primary characteristics. And so I started looking for goddesses that their stories carried those characteristics, or their mythic qualities carried those characteristics. And so in the beginning, I would, in a sense, put them I had a big binder when I started out, and so I would put pages in the binder, 12 tabs, one for each sign, one for each area of the year. And slowly but surely, some of them felt obvious and some of them not so, but I learned to trust. And I can't tell you how many times it has happened to me, which is a wonderful experience, where someone who's read the book would say how amazed they were with the goddess of their day, because there would be some certain small item or thing that was particular to them, and it was also particular to the goddess of that day. So I would say that I invited them in a very conscious way. I invited the archetypes of the divine feminine around the wheel to tell me who they were and where they belonged. And I listened and I moved and I wrote, but I feel that it was an extremely guided process. Hard research, but someone may have some sort of an experience within mythology what's called the destroying crone, the one that may end an age or the end a year or a cycle. And some of the archetypes can be frightening because everything is a cycle. It isn't all just new birth and flowering. There has to come an end to every single cycle. So some of the like Hecate, the Greek goddess of crossroads, who has the aspect of endings, this can be frightening. And what will people think? And is it okay to embody this energy or this power and step into it? And just as you say, what will happen? Will I be attacked? Will I be harmed? Is it safe? And my own feeling about that is, while there may be concern on people's parts, if we don't bring the world and our relationships with the sacred masculine back into balance, we're not going to make it. I mean, that's my fear with what's going on in the earth and how we have abused things. There really needs to be this reciprocity and balance between the masculine and feminine principles. And it's the feminine principle that has to reclaim, I believe, what's been lost and show that to the world and to the masculine so that we can come back into equilibrium. My realization was, I mean, it's like a bird trying to fly with one wing or us trying to operate with only one arm or one leg. There is another half to reality. And it's interesting, in the ancient Egyptian traditions, the ancient Egyptians believed that deity had no gender, but when the gods and goddesses manifested in the physical realm, they did so as a polarity. So every deity had a masculine expression and a feminine expression. So the famous god Thoth, or Hermes to the Greeks, in Egypt had a female counterpart whose name was Sachet, and she was incredibly powerful. She worked with him. She made the sounds that became the words of the language, and she's the one she and her priests measured the chord that aligned the temples to the stars. That was her part. And her counterpart, Thoth, who's the one that everybody recognizes. So they were all balanced in that way, sometimes thought of as twins, where they each, the energy expressed as a spectrum, a polarized spectrum, with the masculine on one side and the feminine on the other side, as in a sense discrete deities that represented those different halves of a single archetypal force. Of course, that reminds me, as I mentioned earlier, the Greek myth of Demeter and her daughter Persephone. Same thing. It's a reclamation, and I won't go into the long story now, but it's really very similar. And the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris, which again is a reclamation, and the whole point of it is to operate in conjunction with the earth. There's an Egyptian goddess I really love. Her name is Ma'at. She's said to be a goddess of truth and justice. And to the Egyptians, she didn't ever have her own temple, but there was a small shrine in every Egyptian temple to her, because she represented, in a similar way to the Hindu goddess Lakshmi, right relationship to all things, and that our entire life should be based on a principle of justice, of fairness, of reciprocity, and that very much included our relationship with the earth, which the ancient Egyptians were very much concerned about as an agricultural society along the banks of the Nile. It's something that we've lost. There's more awareness of it, but it's at the base probably the most important thing that we can do to honor that web of life of which we are a part, both with the animals, with the plants, with the earth itself, and with these archetypal energies that are very real and that manifest through deities through energies that we can experience and actually have relationships with. It's very powerful. In my research, I discovered that the bear has been thought of as a goddess for something like 80,000 years. So it goes back a very long time in terms of recognizing some of these archetypes. And I absolutely, the Hindus and the Egyptians, and in a sense the Catholics as well with the statues, the ancient Egyptians believed that the statues of the deities within the temples, when they were invoked, they believed that the actual energy of a deity would inhabit the statue and interact with them. And the Hindus have the same belief. They bathe the statues, they clothe them, they leave food in front of them. And I think that some of that even lasted into the Catholic traditions with the statues and the votive candles and so on. And those are remnants of truths and practices that are very real. But we have to make it a practice to have them enter into our lives in a very conscious way. Oh, well, this is a good one. Who came up? It's actually the goddess for July 1st. It's Rhea, who's an ancient Titan. Her key word is flow. Rhea is an ancient mother goddess and queen of the Titans who lived in the golden age that preceded the Greek Olympians. She's the daughter of Gaia, the earth itself, and Uranos, the sky. And she is Demeter's mother. Her name means flow in the sense of menstruation and the waters of birth. Rhea is also considered to be the great mountain mother of Mount Ida in Crete. One of her symbols is the swan, because it is a gentle creature, but also a formidable guardian and opponent. In later Greek myth, Kronos was her brother, and he became her consort, which diminished her status. The Romans knew her as Magna Mater, meaning Great Mother. In Cretan ancient myths, she had no consort. In fact, Rhea was Mother Time herself, who ruled alone, and it was she who wielded the sickle of the moon that was later appropriated by Father Time. Like Cybele, Rhea was pictured on a chariot drawn by lions, which hints at her antiquity. Rampant lions often flanked her statue at the entrance of ancient cities. Her contemplation is, I glide through this day as serenely as a majestic swan on a still lake.